Welcome to the Mid Week Tease with me, Adelle Onyango, where I share some random and not too random thoughts on things. And in this episode, let's start working towards making you the woman you've always wanted to be. Now, this week's episode is a little bit different, right? And quite special. It always is whenever I bring this person on the show because they're somebody who has been extremely instrumental on my own healing journey. You're about to listen in on a conversation I had with my very own therapist, who also happens to be an accredited counseling psychologist. Her name is Faith Guchu. And man, a lot of the woman I've become when I look at like the boundaries I hold, my self-awareness, the way I show up for myself, the way I show up in my relationships and my friendships and my work, my business, so much of that woman and the work that went into making her began in the sessions that I had with Faith. Now, ahead of our upcoming wellness talk, which is coming up on the 11th of April, it is dubbed Becoming the Woman You Want to Be. Ahead of that, I wanted you to get a bit of a glimpse as to what part of becoming that woman we want to zero in on, right? Because here's the thing. So many of us, and I'm pretty sure you can relate with this, we're trying to become better versions of ourselves. So we want to become more confident, more secure, more at peace. But sometimes we're doing the work and it doesn't really stick. And I think the reason is we're doing it without understanding what shaped us the way we are in the first place. Does that make sense? And when I look back on the year of weekly therapy sessions that I did with Faith, where we spent a bulk of time and a bulk of work on was unpacking childhood wounds. When I talk about childhood wounds, I'm not talking about the big obvious ones because everybody's mind always runs to big T trauma. But what I'm talking about are the subtle everyday things that in a very sneaky, quiet way shaped how you see yourself, right? They shaped how you love, how you work, how you move through this world, right? If you've ever found yourself people-pleasing, overworking, fearing abandonment, that one was me. There's so many relationships I stayed in for much longer than I needed to be because the fear of abandonment was so real. Or maybe you found yourself struggling to feel enough. This episode is so important for you to listen to. And the wellness talk that Faith is going to be leading, sorry, I forgot to say that. She is the guest speaker at the wellness talk, is going to be a must attend for you. Because on a personal level, I think I'm very clear that my purpose is to help free African women through healing. And that's why I'm sharing my therapist with you through this episode and through the wellness talk. So listen into the conversation. If you want more information on the wellness talk and if you want to book your slot, which I suggest you do nice and early because we have limited slots, there's a link in the show notes. But right now, let's get into my chit chat with Faith. This is one of my favorite people to always have drop in on an episode because honestly, everything that I have managed to do in the last couple of years and just who I've managed to be, a lot of it was born with the work that I did with you, Faith. And I know I say that all the time, but I mean it.
Thank you, Adelle. I'm really humbled. And I'm also very happy that you're doing a great job.
So you're going to be our first wellness talk guest for 2026.
Wow, that's nice.
Isn't it? What a
Yes, it
wonderful way
is.
to start. A wonderful way to start.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to have you join us for this. And I know my colleague Mercy is going to be running this wellness talk as she always does. And we're looking at becoming the woman you want to be.
Yes.
And one of the things that can help you become the woman that you want to be, at least in
Mm-hmm.
my experience, even working with you, one of the things I
Mm-hmm.
had to confront was childhood wounds and
Mm-hmm.
how that is linked to adult patterns. So maybe we start there just as an intro. Why do you think
Yes.
it's important for us women when we're looking at the women we want to be, our
Mm-hmm.
best self, our highest self? Why
Mm-hmm.
is it important for us to start chambuaing our childhood wounds and adult
Mm-hmm.
patterns?
One with childhood wounds, which I think just touching base on it, emotional injuries that occur in our childhood. So we need to get into it and ask ourselves, what is it that we lacked? These include love, these include safety, these include validation, these include acceptance and protection. So if you didn't have that, you need to resolve it so that you can become the very best version of yourself.
I truly agree that
Yes, Adele.
because we'll jump into relationships in a bit because you start
Yes.
finding that what you didn't get in childhood, you start seeking
Yes.
in
Yes.
relationships and other places, and we're going to get to that. But when we talk about childhood wounds, a lot of people
Yes.
immediately say, oh, this doesn't
Mm-hmm.
involve me, because we think it has to be major trauma, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But maybe you could unpack what childhood wounds are in just the context of emotional development. Break it down to the day to day so that the woman listening can start to really evaluate whether this touches on her.
We have what we call the subtle childhood wounds. Mostly we concentrate on the traumatic experiences where there was physical abuse, uh, sexual abuse, but we have what we call the emotional and the verbal abuse. And I'll give even the statements. In fact, let's talk about the statements where someone just pass around and tell you you have, for example, I'll give an example of where you have big shoulders.
Yeah.
So what are they telling you very early in life, that you are more masculine than you are more feminine, or you have small shoulders for the boy, you are more feminine than you are more masculine. For example, the other one would be stop crying, or you are too sensitive.
Yeah.
And they are invalidating the reason that is making you cry. Or maybe you have gone to report that someone did a 1, 2, 3 thing to you. And when they invalidated your experience, they invalidated your feelings. And then what happens? You do not go seeking for support, because the primary caregivers were not able to give you that. You become super independent, but deep down, you are wishing if someone would really see you. The other one would be, for example, comparison, where you are compared to your sister who is brighter, who is disciplined, seemingly more disciplined than you, seemingly more clever, for example. And even the color scheme,
Oh,
where your
yes.
color skin is seen as not beautiful, not good enough. I'll also give an example when you're competing and maybe you are playing as children, and just a statement, adults, that, for example, Faith is dancing better than Adele. Adele is dancing better than, so the moves more than I do. So that will kill my initiative to ever dance in front of anyone. So I'll be
Yeah.
saying I have is it a left leg?
Yeah. Oh, two left legs.
Two left legs. Yeah, and fearing because one, you were not affirmed. Because the primary caregivers, if they don't affirm the child is in doubt throughout. So am I doing a good thing? In fact, it interferes with your self-concept and the attachment styles,
Oh,
which maybe
yeah.
we'll talk about later. Yes.
This is so true because when you're talking about this, I just remember, and it's crazy because I'm 37, but I can remember things that I was told
Mhm.
by an aunt who was very unkind when I was, I don't know, 6,
Mhm.
7, 8.
Mhm.
And it's those things you're talking about of like, oh, I remember one statement she said, like, you're so thin, only
Mhm.
a white man would want to marry you.
Mhm.
And she would compare me to other people. Every other woman in my family is like full figured,
Mhm.
curves for days. I'm just
Mhm.
straight.
Yeah.
and and there were times that she would say, "Oh, you look like the men." And
Yes.
so even those things start to make you question, like, is something wrong with my body? You start
Mhm.
to like reduce and shrink and you're not confident. How do the things that you've talked about start to impact women in adulthood when it comes to even just, you've talked about your self-concept, but even just your
Yes.
self-worth and self-esteem?
Maybe let me just take you back a bit to this is the primary caregiver who is saying it.
Mm.
Now, if you go to primary school, high school, and it is repeated, then you stamp that as the gospel truth.
Oh man. Yeah.
You stamp it as a gospel truth. So you start seeing yourself not beautiful, not curvy. And now later in life, because you're already feeling inadequate. In fact, what is the seed that has been given to you?
Mm.
The seed of inadequacy.
Yes.
So every time in relationships or in adulthood, you'll be trying to make sure that you fit in. People feel you are valuable by
Mm.
doing what? People pleasing. Then because of the fear of abandonment, overdoing,
Mm.
perfectionism, or emotional avoidance, or codependency.
Mm. Faith, you're
Then,
shouting.
for example, maybe I'll say when someone is raised with constant criticism, they may become perfectionist adults
Mm.
who now believe mistakes will lead to rejection. So if they fail on one aspect, they feel like they want to die because they are not supposed to make any mistake. Remember, they are already on that line of we are not good enough.
Mm.
So another person maybe who may have experienced emotional neglect may avoid intimacy because of vulnerability, because the vulnerability make them feel unsafe.
Mm.
So you're in a relationship, but when it gets to cozy and you pull out, or you
Mm.
make sure that you sabotage the relationship because you don't know what to do with yourself when you're vulnerable.
Mm. It's crazy like how linked things we experience in childhood are to just patterns we have in adulthood.
Yes.
And maybe if we could, you've already touched on how these patterns show up in adult relationships a bit. If we go deeper into romantic relationships, right? You
Yes.
mentioned
Yes.
attachment styles. How are these
Yes.
childhood wounds linked there?
If you felt abandoned,
Mm.
not cared for, not seen,
Mm.
not heard, you will have either what we call insecure attachment style, that is anxious attachment style,
Mm.
or the disorganized. You are anxious and you are avoidant. So, for example, with the anxious attachment style, there's what we call the subtle, or let me call it white dictatorship, because there's the dark dictatorship that we all know of. So the subtle dictatorship, so in order for you to feel in control, that this person does not go very far away from you, you ensure that you have a structured lifestyle. Too structured that you are more on structure than you are into the relationship. I'll give an example. So we need to kiss in the morning, hug in the morning, tell me when you've gotten home, or you've gotten to work, tell me when you go for a break, tell me when you're coming from work. We need to eat, to share dinner together at 7. We need to tuck in our children at 9. We need to clean up our children, bathe our children before they sleep. So behind the scene,
Mm.
the person who is doing that feels safe that they have not, and you make sure that you have one car. And I'm not saying that everyone who has everyone.
But it's control. You're controlling.
Yeah, you are controlling the narrative. So if this person dare do something different, like doesn't come home by 5 if the schedule is at 5, does not call you during the day, does not hug you, kiss you in the morning, does not say where he is, he's not giving you, or they are not giving you, uh, 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 keeping you updated on their day. It erases your anxiety. Now, if I take you back in regards to attachment style, whatever we lacked in our parents, it is what we seek for in relationships. So, for example, if I grew up feeling abandoned, so I will have my need is secure attachment style, that I'm able to control the narrative. I'm able to figure out, like, it's so structured. And it
It's predictable.
It's that's the word. It's predictable. Yeah, it's predictable. The other thing, some behavior may also include the codependency. You don't know who you are away from someone else. You really can't tell. So in case this relationship ends, you feel like you want to die because you don't know who you are away from them. Then the fear of conflict. Something is going wrong, but you don't want to state it. You don't want to question it. You don't want even to bring it to the table because you are fearing if you do, this person will leave. So, the fear of conflict. Then the controlling behavior. I think I've shared about that. Then the emotional withdrawal. Something happens very minor and you are out there, you're sleeping in a different bedroom. You want to, if you're driving together, you want to walk to work to make sure that you want to make to work. If you're given money, you don't want to pick it or to take it. And yet you're in dire need.
Yeah.
Yet you're in dire need.
This is so interesting because, like, there's so many ways. I've worked on it, but that yearning for predictability, I was smack.
Yes.
I was smack in the middle of that. So even when you're talking about, in the morning, he has to do this. The day he doesn't, you're like, something is wrong.
Yes.
Then now you're alert.
Then there's something else. Always asking, am I smart enough? Am I looking good? You don't compliment me. Because their compliment feeds you. So if they don't compliment you, even when whatever little thing you do to them, you feel they need to really, they really need to appreciate. But if they're not coming from anxious attachment style, they don't see the need. I'll give an example. If someone grew up securely, they don't see the need to keep on affirming you. I mean, you are an adult and you were okay before even we met. Why?
Yeah.
Then the other thing is you get attracted to an individual and they are looking good, corporate picture, they're independent up until they're in a relationship. So you keep wondering, who is this independent person that I met who has become so codependent to a point someone is telling you, by the way, you need to be visiting your friends. You need a life. Yeah, you need a life after, of course, the few months after the passion has ended.
And reality is checking in.
And the reality is checking it. So they feel you are overwhelmingly available. They feel like you are overwhelmingly available. Yeah.
This is so interesting, and it really goes back to that one sentence you said, and I would love you to repeat it about what you didn't get from your primary caregivers. You now go out and you're looking for it in the relationship.
Yes, they are farming. You want to be affirmed. You want to be told, you want to be affirmed. You want to be taken care of. You want to be heard. You want to be seen. you want to matter in this relationship, and you keep on questioning whether you really matter, then this person get confused. I mean, is this the same person I admired who was so independent and doing their life away from me, who has become like a glue and don't want to leave?
So true. So true. Yeah. And, at this point, for you who's listening, has anything landed with you? Is Faith also shouting at you? If you can identify wherever you're listening to this on, just drop a comment and let us know.
Yeah.
But, one thing that I learned from you, Faith, and this was from a wellness talk we did, I think on father wounds, if I'm not wrong. A lot of times we think these wounds that we get in childhood affect only romantic relationships. But you talked about how it affects us in the workplace. I remember you said you might start interacting with your boss, but your boss in your head is like your parent,
Yes.
And so how do childhood wounds affect us as women in our careers and in the workplace even, or even for those of us who are in business?
Many of us, as you have said, we think it's only romantic relationships, but also career. So maybe a child early experience shapes your core beliefs about worth and capability. So if a child was only praised for achievements, so they grow into adults who believe love and respect must be earned through success. Now, maybe for example, you have been given a docket. You get to doing it. So you may work excessively hard to a point where even when you go on leave, you still want to control the docket away from the office. Because one, you don't want to fail. And this work is the work that redeemed you. And mostly for people who grew up being praised for the things they did. So you work very hard. You avoid rest. You don't even know what rest means. You fear failure because your identity is tied on performance. It is tied to performing. It is tied to, so you are more of a human, and I think I've said this before, a human doing other than a human being. Which after all this can lead to burnout or chronic stress. So I'll give an example of a team leader who has the personality of the parent you feared most. This both awakens your childhood trauma or your childhood experiences with the parent who was tough. So you start re-experiencing your mom, your dad in this team leader. So for example, if they say something very minor, it awakens all the wounds and you overreact. I don't know whether where someone overreacts and later you ask yourself, by the way, why did I have to cry? Why did I have to shout all that? And you leave the boss, in fact, in question. I mean, what have I really done that warranted all this reaction? But it's because they have, we say we don't heal from a loss we've not processed, and trauma sits in the body.
Yes.
So when it is awakened, you will be dealing with your mom, your dad, or your primary caregiver through your boss.
That is so true, because also one of the greatest surprises of doing therapy with you for me was how it made me better in my business. I think I'd compartmentalized my life, and I just thought business is more robotic and would therapy can't assist there. But if I look at how my childhood affected me, there was definite issues of a mixture of many things, but a big blow to self-esteem, a big blow to how I saw myself in terms of value. So I need to overwork to prove my value, constantly seeking validation external to myself. And so when you bring that to business, even with negotiating, like I would just be so grateful someone wants to work with me. I wouldn't be thinking about,
Yes.
there needs to be a number that you have worked out. There are formulas that help you price. You know how much you have to pay carry. You know what your
Yes.
operating costs are. I wouldn't be thinking about, I'd just be like, oh, they want to work with me. I need to overdo to prove
Mm-hmm.
my worth for
Mm-hmm.
them, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's so crazy how we carry these wounds into our workplaces, be it employment or business.
Yeah. Maybe there's something I need to add.
Mm.
Because of the fear, you will find some people avoiding leadership
Mm.
because of fear of criticism. And you may also find them constantly self-approving and also maybe over consulting.
Mm.
And that's why you can be very good and not go to the corporate ladder, not grow in the corporate ladder. And not because you're not good at your work, but someone doesn't feel like you're independent enough to handle a docket.
Mm.
Yeah. So you will be a very hard worker. Either people are able to see your fear, or you also become, you ensure that you don't surpass so that you're not promoted to leadership, because that's what you avoid.
This is
Mm-hmm.
so incredible because I can see in real time how liberating for me
Mm-hmm.
doing this work was. And if we're talking about doing this wellness talk, helping women become the women they've always wanted to be, it's so important for them to join us. And before I go into the next point, if you're listening, you want to sign up, it's linked in the show notes, but this talk is going to be on the 11th of April at 10 a.m. and all the ticketing details are in the show notes. Now, Faith, there's something that I have found to be so important in honoring the woman I am and working towards the woman I want to be. And it's this idea of learning to give myself what I didn't receive growing up, right? One of those things, I mean, it's a long list, but one of those things for me is the
Yeah.
reminder of safety. And I'll even say it out loud and
Yes.
say, Adele, you're safe. You're safe. You're safe. Nobody's coming
Yes.
to kick you out of your house. Nobody
Yes.
is coming to disrupt your peace. You're safe. You're safe. And it's,
Yes.
have to keep reminding myself that. But I think, and I know you agree on this, one of the most powerful things in healing is learning to give yourself what you didn't receive. So,
Yeah.
what do you think this actually looks like in tangible practice?
Okay. We call it the self-reparenting,
Mm.
where we consciously provide ourselves with the emotional support we lacked as children. Because there's no one who will give you that, because they don't know where you are lacking and what you are lacking. I'll give an example for someone who grew up without emotional validation. They may begin to practice self-compassion, like one acknowledging their feelings rather than dismissing them.
Mm.
Whoever, the person who never learned to say no, saying no.
Mm.
Maybe I can give myself disclosure. Because of the conditioning, I thought I was sanguine until I did therapy and
Yeah.
realized, every time we would go for functions, I wouldn't sit down. I would be
Mm.
all over saying hi to everyone, cousins, I'm there, but when I learned I am not really that person, nowadays I go for meetups or meetings or functions and sit until the end and not feel guilty saying hi to people, because that is not myself. I was conditioned to be like that because of what I was going through. But now, because I've done the work and people now say you are antisocial, you are proud. But where is it coming from? It's coming from places where I will not take myself where I got at.
Mm.
Journaling is also very key, because you're the ones, it's good to have what you call the emotional, the wheel of emotions with you. Why am I angry today?
Mm.
Because anger is not towards the other person. What makes them, it is anytime you feel angry, that person has touched you in a place where you have not fully healed.
Mm.
of course, attending therapy, practicing self-care, and creating healthy boundaries in relationships. It's okay to say no. Then there's something else you don't need to. It doesn't mean because we are relatives or we are sisters and brothers, we have to tag along like a conveying belt. No, we don't.
Yeah.
Because we grew up in the same home, but we experienced our parents differently. So you can be here trying to explain to your sister or to your brother that you were abused. Then they're asking, who abused you? And we had a very good mom and a very... Then, of course, the other thing is to stop reparenting. You cannot self-reparent if you are still a parentified child. You've got to stop parenting others in order to parent self.
I love that you've brought in the family because a lot of Kenyan or African families, there are certain behaviors that are just normalized, right? And so you see even this childhood wounds we're talking about being passed down across generations, right? And maybe you could speak to that a bit. I know we're going to go into it a bit more in the talk, but how does that cycle continue to happen within the typical African family?
Now, there's what I call it psychological inheritance. Whatever we hated in our parents, it's what we become.
Yes.
This very same thing we hated in our parents are the very same thing our children hate about us, or even relatives, or even friends. In fact, let me call friends.
Yeah.
Whatever we hated in our parents, it's what our friends hate about us. Our children hate about us, our relationship. For example, if you are brought up by a mom who didn't have boundaries, so you realize in your relationship, or too forgiving, you realize in your relationship, wait a minute, things have happened in my life and I've not made any move or have not corrected it or have not said anything. So I'm normalizing what was normalized by my... Now, if you are brought up by a strict parent, the strict parent was maybe physically abusive. So for you, you will not be physically abusive, but the rules are even abusive. The rules to make sure that nothing goes wrong. But, there are those structures that, if you're more concentrated on the structure or what we call the system than you're concentrated on the relationship. So if someone didn't come back to the house by 7, that becomes a major thing. Exactly how you were brought up, but now differently, because this is, for you, you become very strict to ensure you don't lose control. But what are you doing? You are bringing up zombies, just like you were brought up into this world. So you see the same patterns. Then later in life, you start asking, Faith does not have initiative. Who killed it? The parents did, because of saying, don't do this, don't do this, don't. So when they come for therapy, they're like, I really don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, because I'm not supposed to be doing everything here. Because of fear of messing up. The other thing is when, for example, if you're abused at 9 years old, you become hyper vigilant when your child becomes 9 years. You can even leave work. So this child is very innocent. And when they go out to play, you're like, what did you do?
Yes.
Did they touch your private part? They don't even know they have a private part. So you start you start giving them, you start from there, they lose innocence. So, people do this. But who is selling that idea to them? The traumatized parent. So they are re-traumatizing the child.
And they're passing it on across generations.
Yes.
They've inherited it.
Yes.
So how do we become the women who break that cycle?
One, generational patterns are passed through observation and learned behavior. Children watch how parents handle stress, conflict, and relationship. And they unconsciously adopt those behaviors. For example, how your parents used to handle conflict, you tend to have the same in your relationships. So So how do we break the generational curses? And before then, maybe I need to say, if a child grows up in a household where arguments were resolved through shouting, they may repeat the same communication style in their adult relationship. So how do we break that? One of the things we need to be self-aware.
Yes.
When you're self-aware, I remember I was shouting through until I joined the bank. I was shouting in where I was employed in the private sector, where I was employed in the NGO, because it was male dominated until I was employed in the bank, and I was working under a very soft lady. So there was a bit of quietness. I was like, so I would always be told, shh. Anytime tells it, shh, then it means I became self-aware that I shout. I also now had to gather the courage to intentionally change. So it involves what? Recognizing harmful patterns, or recognizing things that are not, there's what we call social ethics. So like you can shout too much that you cause a nuisance to your neighborhood.
Yes.
Seeking healing through reflect, or therapy, and consciously choosing different behaviors. Consciously. Because if it's not conscious, for example, if you are raised in a harsh household, you may choose to be gentle and emotionally supportive parent, ensuring that your children experience what? Safety and validation and everything else that you did not experience in your parents. Though that has to be very intentional, because the natural inclination is to go through our parents' road.
Because it's what you know, because it's all you
what
saw
we
for
know.
years.
Yes.
When we're talking about this family thing, I've just remembered, and even when you're talking about being conscious. So we recently had a family funeral, so we were all together, and I interacted with a relative who for a short stint was my primary caregiver. We were all seated together, many cousins, and my drumming came up. So I'm learning how to drum, getting really good at it, and enjoying it. It's really where I find my joy. And so this family member said, "Oh, let me see the video of you drumming." So I showed them a video. I know I drum very well, Faith. No one can take that away from me. I know it, I know I'm working towards a goal, but as of now, I drum really well. And this primary caregiver, they said, "Oh, why are you only drumming on one side? Like you're not using they were criticizing, basically. Immediately they started criticizing. And it's funny how when you're conscious, in my head, I laughed and I just thought, how can someone who has never sat behind a drum come and start dictating? And when you're talking, I now realize how they had impacted me, because I would never sit in my wins, Faith, because nothing good I was doing was ever enough. So even in my head, if I achieve something, be it in my career or personal life, I wouldn't even stop to tell myself, "Adelle, well done," because I'd grown up for a couple of years when I was living with them, knowing that my good was never enough.
Good enough. Never good enough.
And so I shared this just as a testament of how being self-aware and conscious can help you not even be triggered or lean. You start to see it. You're like, but me, I know I drum well personally. And my drum teacher who studies drums knows I drum well. So
has affirmed it. But can you imagine if you didn't have that confidence?
Yes.
What would it have done? And there's something I normally say: you don't get a feedback from people who never give you positive feedback. Then those are not the people you grace your life with in regards to waiting for their comments to validate, because they will not.
Exactly.
So if they have never appreciated you, then even if you showed them what, they will never appreciate it.
I love that we're doing this wellness talk, and I love that we're trying to help women become the women they want to be, but also be the ones who break those generational cycles and liberate
Mm,
their children and their
mm,
children's children, um,
mm.
and their family members, honestly. So for someone who is listening right now and is hearing what you're saying, Faith, and is like, oh my God, that is me. That is me. What
Mhm.
is one thing you would want them to know?
I would want them to know that recognizing their patterns is the first step towards healing.
Mm,
Yeah, many people or most of us carry childhood wounds without realizing their origin.
mm,
Awareness allows individuals to begin understanding themselves with compassion rather than blame. Like you're not blaming anyone, like you need to do this on your own. Like you cannot keep on saying, my mom, my dad did this.
mm.
Yeah, walk the journey to healing.
And one step could be coming for the wellness talk. So what are you going to be
Yes.
diving deeper into during the wellness talk?
We will go through the identifying childhood emotional wounds, understanding the relationship patterns, challenging limiting beliefs,
Mm.
and developing healthier coping strategies. They'll also learn about practical tools for emotional healing and self awareness.
Maybe in closing, what's one benefit our community stands to benefit the most from attending this wellness talk?
The people who struggle with self esteem, the people who struggle with relationship challenges, people pleasing, and emotional burnout, as well as those ones who understand their personal patterns more deeply. You understand your personal patterns so deeply, but you've not done, in fact, it's from awareness to action.
Mm.
Because most of us are aware, but we don't take action.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we need to take action.
I love that. I love that. I'm
Yes.
really looking forward to this wellness talk. Faith is going to be our guest speaker. It's happening on the 11th of April, 10 a.m. All the ticketing details are in the show notes. Grab your tickets nice and early because whenever we have Faith, people always want to come in as they should.
Mhm.
And we like to keep it nice and intimate. Another thing that I think is something I love about the wellness talks is that when you attend, we have a number where you can send in questions to Faith anonymously in case you want to have that kind of privacy. That's also there. So we hope to see you at the wellness talk. Faith, thank you so much for
Welcome.
just the work that you do and being so passionate about helping women. You've always told me that.
Thank you.
I don't know about you, but every time I have conversations like these, something shifts for me, you know? And even just talking to her, I'm like, oh my God, this happened just the other day. Oh, that's why I feel, you know what I mean? A lot of things become so much clearer. And maybe even as you were listening to the conversation, you started to recognize yourself, right? You started to be like, that's how I'm showing up in relationships. Or, yeah, why am I working so hard to prove my worth? Why do I still feel unseen or unheard or not enough? First, I want you to sit in the fact that it's powerful that you begin to recognize these patterns or these effects of childhood wounds that are holding you back from becoming the woman that you want to be. Because awareness is such a huge step. It's where healing begins. You can't heal what you don't even recognize or spot. You know what I mean? Once you see the pattern, you finally have the power to change it. That's exactly what we're going to be doing at the Wellness Talk, right? So, again, it's happening on the 11th of April at 10 a.m. It's virtual. So, wherever you are in this world, you can join in. And Faith is going to be taking us deeper into helping you identify your patterns, understand where they come from, and most importantly, giving you practical tools to start doing the work. And if you've ever wanted a safe space to even just ask questions anonymously, during the wellness talk, we're going to have a hotline, which we always do in all our talks, where you can send in your questions anonymously. Tickets are just 1,000 bob. Book your slot. We try and make our wellness talks nice and intimate so they can really be a safe space. And what that means is that we have limited slots. So book your slots nice and early. The link to do so is in the show notes. Share a wellness talk with an African woman who you love, because this is how we start working to freeing ourselves and becoming the best versions of ourselves. And then come as you are. Come with curiosity to the wellness talk. Come with this eagerness to meet yourself a little more honestly, right? And man, I hope you really enjoyed this episode. I'm really psyched about the wellness talk and about sharing this conversation with you. And if you connected with it, as always, share it with someone you love. Thanks for listening to the Mid Week Tease, a Legally Clueless Africa production. Episodes go out every Wednesday, and you can learn more about us by going to legallycluelessafrica.com.